data analytics, Excel data analysis, and this time around we'll be talking about using lookups. Introduction. You can use Excel functions to find values in a range of data using VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP and obtain the value or the reference to a value from within a table or range. This is where we use the index function. Obtain the relative position of a specified item in the range of cells using the match function. You can also combine these functions to get the required results based on the inputs you have. Using the VLOOKUP function. So the syntax of the VLOOKUP function is VLOOKUP, and then we have here the lookup value. So this is where we're going to compare the value to a table array. And then we obtain the value from the table array using this column index number. And we have here the range lookup, which will be explained later. So the lookup value is the value you want to look up. This one. Lookup value can be a value or a reference to a cell. Lookup value must be in the first column of the range of cells you specify in the table array. So it should be the first column. Table array is the range of cells in which VLOOKUP will search the lookup value, and the return value table array must contain. The lookup value is in the first column, and the return value you want to find. The first column containing the VLOOKUP value can either be sorted in ascending order or not. However, the result will be based on the order of this column. Column index number is the column number in the table array that contains the return value. The number starts with 1 for the leftmost column of the table array. The range lookup is an optional logical value, so it's true or false, that specifies whether you want VLOOKUP to find an exact match or an appropriate match. Range lookup can be omitted, so in which case it is assumed to be true, and VLOOKUP tries to find an approximate match. So true, in which case VLOOKUP tries to find an approximate match. In other words, if an exact match is not found, the next largest value that is less than lookup value is returned. False is when a case VLOOKUP tries to find an exact match. 1, in which case is assumed to be true and VLOOKUP tries to find an approximate match. 0, in which case is assumed to be false and VLOOKUP tries to find an exact match. So if range lookup is omitted or true or 1, VLOOKUP works correctly only when the first column in the table array is sorted. So remember that. So if it is omitted, true or 1, then the first column should be sorted. Otherwise, it may result in incorrect values. In such a case, use false for range lookup. Using VLOOKUP function with range lookup true. So consider the list of student marks. You can obtain the corresponding grades with VLOOKUP from an array containing the marks, intervals, and past categories. So this is a table array. So you notice the marks is when 0 up to 34 or 34 point something, that's fail. 35 is third class, that's 35 to 49. Then 50, that's second class, that's 50 to 59. Then 60, first class, that's of course 60 to 74. And 74, first class with distinction. Note that the first column marks based on which grades are obtained is sorted, so this one is sorted in ascending order. Hence, using the true for range lookup argument, you can get approximate match, that is what is required. Name this array as grades. So we can name this array as grades. So it is a good practice to name arrays in this way so that you need not remember the cell ranges. Now you are ready to look up the grade for the list of marks you have as follows. So we have here VLOOKUP B4. So B4, that's the address of this, because this is the value that we're going to look up in this table. So V4, and grades is the name of the table array. And then we have 2. Why 2? Because this is column 1, column 2, and we want to return these values here. So the values are in column 2. And then we use true. That means it's an approximate match. So we're not getting the exact match. Okay, so I'll repeat. So VLOOKUP B4 is the value that we're looking for, or the lookup value. So we're going to look for this value here in this array. And then the next parameter here is grades. That's the name of the table array. Then 2, because this is column 1, column 2, we would like to return this value at column 2. Then true for approximate match. So as you can observe, column index num indicates the column of the return value in table array is 2. And the range lookup is true. The first column containing the lookup value in the table array grades is in ascending order. Hence, the result will be correct. You can get the return value for approximate matches also. That is, VLOOKUP computes as follows. So again, to our lesser than 35, that's fail. Greater or equal to 35 and lesser than 50, that's third class. Greater or equal to 50 and lesser than 60, that's second class. Greater than 60 and lesser than 75 is first class. And greater or equal to 75, that's first class with distinction. So if you notice here, that's 0 to 35. So that's lesser than 35 will be placed here. This should be from 35 to 49, or that's lesser than 50 as mentioned here in this table. So you will get the following results. So 85 here will be first class with distinction. 75 will be first class with distinction. 72, so this one is from 60 to lesser than 75, so that will be first class. 55 will be in this range, and so on and so forth. So that will be the value that will be displayed in the pass category. Consider a list of products containing, so this time around we have a range lookup false. So consider a list of products containing the product ID. So this one, product ID, and price for each product. So this is the price. The product ID and price will be added to the end of the list whenever a new product is launched. So this would mean that the product IDs need not be in ascending order. So since if there's a new product, we just add here. So it may not be in the ascending order. The product list might be as shown below. So this is an example of the product list. So we have the product ID, product name, and price. So we name this array for this example as product info. You can obtain the price of a product given the product ID with the VLOOKUP function as the product ID is in the first column. So the price is in column 3, and hence column index number should be 3. So this is the value that we would like to get. So use VLOOKUP function with the range lookup as true. Use lookup function with the range lookup as false. So we'll be using both just to compare. So we have here our product ID, and then we try to VLOOKUP. So using this value and using this table. So the first one we use a true value, and the next one we use the false value. So the false will be the exact match, while true is the approximate match. So if we try this one, so you notice here that we have different values. So we have 182.63 here, when we have 179.65 here. So this is the wrong result, and this one is the correct result because this is the price of hand wash with this HW0007. So again, that's because this one is not sorted. But if you sort this one, this will give us also the correct value. But of course, if let's say this is not sorted, then we might be looking for the exact match. So we use the range lookup should be false. Using HLOOKUP. HLOOKUP is actually similar with VLOOKUP except for the orientation of the table. So you can use HLOOKUP function if the data is in rows rather than columns. So let us take the example of a product information. Suppose the array looks as follow. So we have the product ID. So these are the product IDs. Then product, these are the name of the products, and these are the prices. So name this array as product range. So we name this as product range. You can find the price of a product given the product ID with HLOOKUP function. So we name the range. So this is the range. We exclude the title. So the syntax of HLOOKUP function is very similar with VLOOKUP. HLOOKUP, so we have the lookup value table array, but this time around, instead of the column index, we use the row index. And then we have here again the range lookup, a true or false value, or 1 or 0. So where lookup value is the value to be found in the first row of the table. Table array is a table of information in which data is looked up, so that's the table. Row index number is the row number in the table array from which the matching value will be returned. Range lookup is a logical value that specifies whether you want HLOOKUP to find an exact match or an approximate match. So again, range lookup can be so similar with VLOOKUP. Omitted, then it is assumed to be true. That means approximate match. If it is true, then we find approximate match. If it is false, then we find an exact match. If it is 1, it is assumed to be true, and HLOOKUP will find for the approximate match. If it is 0, it is assumed to be false, and HLOOKUP will try to find an exact match. So if range lookup is omitted or true or 1, HLOOKUP works correctly only when the first column in the table array is sorted. I think this should be the first row, not first column. Otherwise, it may result in incorrect values. In such a case, use false for range lookup. So this should be first row. You can obtain the price of a product given the product ID with the HLOOKUP function as the product ID is in the first row. So the price is in row 3 and hence row index number should be 3. So again, similar. So we use here HLOOKUP C7 and then product range. I think it should be this one, so C7. So we're looking for this value. So HLOOKUP C7 and product range. So this is the product range. Then row 3. So 1, 2, 3. Row 3. Then we have here true and false. So the correct answer is 171.65. So you can check the results. So since it is not sorted, then this will give the correct answer. False one. Is this sorted? No. The correct answer in the product range is 171.65. You can check the result. So this should be not 171. This should be 179. You observe that in case of VLOOKUP, you got the correct result range if lookup is false, and the wrong result if the range lookup is true. This is because the first row in the product range array is not sorted in ascending order. Hence, remember to use false whenever the data is not sorted. So we use false. I think there's something wrong. Should be we use true. I think there's something wrong with the slide, but let's try this one. Consider the example of student marks used in VLOOKUP. Suppose that you have the data in rows instead of columns as shown in the table. So name this as grade range. So the first row marks based on which the grades are obtained, sorted in ascending order. So HLOOKUP with true for range lookup. You can get the grades with approximate match, and that is what is required. So approximate match. Yes. So sorry for that, because here we are doing the exact match. So we should use the. Sorry for that. I was confused. So since we're going to get the exact match, so we use false. So the false one will get the correct value, but this one is 179.65, not 171. Okay, and here we'll be doing an approximate match. So this time we should be using the true value. So here is an example: HLOOKUP B9. So this is B9, and then the grade range. So this is the grade range. So we use HLOOKUP because our table is, the orientation of our table is horizontal, not vertical, or it is in rows, not columns. So call row 2, so we're going to get this value, that's row 2, and then we have true, that means approximate match. So as you can observe, row index number indicates the column of the returned value in table array in 2 is 2, because that's the second one, so this is 2. And the range lookup is true, that means we have an approximate match. So again, for 0, then this one is 35, that means what we have here is greater than 0, but it should be lesser than 35. So we have here greater than 0 but lesser than 35, and for 35 that should be greater or equal to 35 but lesser than 50, because 50 is on the next column or next value, and so on and so forth. So you will get the following results, so similar with the VLOOKUP. Using the index function. When you have an array of data, you can retrieve a value in the array by specifying the row number and column number of the value in the array. Consider the following sales data, wherein you find the sales in each of the north, south, east, and west regions by the salesperson who are listed. So name the array as sales data. Using index function, you can find the sales of any of the salesperson in a certain region, the total sales in a region by all the salesperson, and the total sales by salesperson in all regions. So let's say, for example, we have here Vicky South sales. So we equal to index sales data, and so what's the syntax again? Index sales data 1, 2. Here we have index sales data 6, 4. So that will explain later. Sum of index sales data 0, 1. That's total north sales. So this one is the total north sales. And James total sales. So James, where's James? James total sales. So index 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0. And Vicky South sales, that is 1, 0, 1, 2. Andy West sales, so Andy is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then South West, Andy West sales, so 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why we have here 6 and 4. You will get the following result. Suppose you do not know the row numbers for the salesperson and column numbers for the regions. Then you need to find the row number and column number first before you retrieve the value with the index function. You can do it with the match function as explained in the next section. Using the match functions, if you need the position of an item in a range, you can use the match function. You can combine match and index function as follows. So it's quite small. So Vicky, region is south. So we're going to get the south value of Vicky. So just like in this case, so south sales. So we have to get the south region equal to match of I can't read that much. So we have here H3, so Vicky. So we have to look for Vicky and B3 to B12. So that's the row number. So we look for Vicky in B3 to B12. So we look for this, and that will give us 1. And then match. Here we have I3. So we look for south. So here we look for where Vicky is. And then here we look for I3 in C2 to F2. So we look for south in this range here. So C2 to F2, 0. So the first one will give us 1, row 1, and this one will give us 2, column 2. So index C3 F2, that's the range. C3 to F2, F12 rather, and then I3, that's the row, and C3 or J3 or K3 rather. So this is J3. Sorry, I can't read that much because it's quite small. So J3 is the row number and K3 is the column number. So the same is true with the other values here. So here we have now the values. So again here we look for where Andy is, and then here we look for where West is. Okay, so that ends our lecture for lookup. So thank you very much for viewing this video.